Hey guys, so in this week's coaching call, we talked to our buddy Aaron from the Vanguard, and in it, we spend probably most of our time talking about how to produce more work. Like if you're an artist or someone who does creative work, how can you be more productive? How can you get more time in? How can you overcome resistance? How can you produce better stuff? And I think this is really useful for anyone who struggles to get themselves to do creative work, whether it's, art or producing music or writing or anything like that. I think you'll really get a lot out of this. And then we also get into mentality on dating, if you're feeling resistant to it, and also talk a little bit about, how you should be thinking about getting more friends and that sort of thing if you want to be more social and have more people in your life. So hopefully you get a lot out of this. And if you did, please make sure you leave a comment, you leave a like, you do all that kind of good stuff. Help us out on the algorithm, and I really appreciate it. All right, let's get to it. All right, everybody, welcome back to another Universal Man coaching call. And today we are joined by our friend. What do you want me to call you? I don't want to just give you.
You can just call me Aaron.
Aaron. Okay. All right. Joined by Aaron, and he's been kind enough to come on, and he's a member of the Vanguard and everything. And so, Aaron, how you doing today, man?
I'm doing good. Doing good.
Awesome.
How have you been?
I've been very well. Been doing very well. So, what would you like to get into here first? Because I know you mentioned that there's a couple of topics that you'd be interested in getting some coaching around.
Right. The first topic is probably the productivity part, because I've been doing pretty good, I feel like, about self-worth and the dignity part of it. So, cutting off porn and other bad habits that let me escape from my negative emotions and stuff like that. But it's been harder to inspire just the positive work ethic in line with those kind of ideals, because I'll just be like, just not the positive side of like, oh, I'm worth it to sacrifice for. It's hard to put that into practice sometimes for long periods of time for productivity that I need to do.
Okay. So let's talk about that. Here, before we go any further, there's a bit of some kind of shaking sound when you're talking. I can't tell what that is.
Better?
Yeah, that's better.
I think it's my mic, yeah.
Okay, all right. Because I don't want to be pissing people off, because they'll definitely tune out, and I want to make sure that people can hear this.
Sure.
So starting out with the productivity stuff, so describe to me, like, where you want to be and where you are. One of the biggest things I can do as a coach is move people from point A to point B. So describe to me, what's the point A of where you're currently at, and what's the point B of where you want to be at?
Okay, so right now I'm like pretty low effort, I feel like, just like a couple of hours a day on working on my art for art school that I'm in right now. And I want to be at a point where I can, pretty much treat it like a full-time job, because that's what I'm trying to get. So like 6 to 8 hours a day in doing that and meeting deadlines. Okay.
So you just really want to up the amount of time that you're putting into your art.
Yeah.
Okay. Easy enough. So how much time are you currently putting in?
So normally I'll do an hour kind of in the morning and like an hour in the afternoon, but it's hard to like jump back into like, okay, now let's go for another focus block again and start that.
Yeah. Okay. And how long have you been working at your art? Like, how long have you been trying to like, increase the amount of time that you can do, et cetera?
It's kind of been a lifelong thing. I've been working at a while, switching between like programming, but also art. So it's been really up and down, but this past few years, like discovering your content has made my habits a lot more consistent. So now I'm trying to be more consistent with just like, instead of like bursts of energy and then like tapering down and all that.
Okay. So you've been making some progress and stuff like that. And part of the reason I was wondering, because, it's like some people, they've just started, and, there's always progress that we can make. So I just kind of wanted to get a feel for where you're at with, you trying to do this. Now, how much other stuff do you have competing for your energy? Like, do you have like a job, or do you have other studies, or is it pretty much like it's you and your art and you just got to do more of your art?
Yeah, that's it. Besides on the porn reboot, I've been it's been mostly just art and keeping my baseline habits up, like sleep and going on walks and journaling.
Okay. So yeah, we can definitely crank things up for sure. So first thing is I want to get a picture of like what does it look like when, you know, you sit down for that first focus block. How much resistance do you have?
It varies on if I have like momentum in the day, but there's quite a bit of resistance, I guess, just anxiety on how I'm going to finish the assignment.
Okay. Okay. So it seems like a lot of the issue is like worrying that like about the outcome, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Cause like, I'm not sure if I'm interpreting it wrong, but like, with habits, you kind of want to, you know, just bit by bit slowly, but like with the, and like build up your duration and quality and everything. But, with school, I suddenly have like a lot higher workload, so I can't just rely on like taking it slow and easy and building it on that. Like I have to increase it a lot more right now.
Yeah.
So that's hard to not feel overwhelmed with it. Like, oh, I should have done like 4 hours today when I didn't.
Okay. And when you say you got like assignments and stuff, like give me an example, like what kind of art and stuff are you doing?
So I'm taking like concept art classes. So one of my assignments is like environmental art, doing landscapes, and I have to come up with like a design and thumbnails for that right now. And just the beginning process, the start of it, it's hard to have faith that like I know in the end it'll look good, but right now it just looks like stick figures and really hard to get past that and in the beginning phase to motivate myself.
So I'm trying to figure out exactly what the resistance is. Is the resistance that you're not going to be able to finish in time? Is the resistance that it just looks bad? Like what is like, because the thing that you're running into is you're creating negativity that doesn't need to be there. And then that makes it harder for you to do the work. And so ultimately, like the name of the game when it comes to productivity is flow states, right? And usually you have to, until you get good at it, you have to pay an admission price to get into a flow state. And that's usually facing some sort of discomfort. But if we can minimize that discomfort, if we can minimize the amount of negativity that you're feeling, the easier it's going to be for you to actually step into that flow state. Does that make sense?
Sure, yeah.
So let's look at this. So what are the big sources of negativity?
Probably that I won't be able to come up with a interesting design, I guess, and get past the first part of just like, oh, this looks like a block, and make this something more complex and interesting.
Okay. So what's the response then to that? All right. Like, okay, it starts out, it looks crappy at first, and you're like, I don't want to do it because it looks crappy. What do you want to say to yourself in that moment?
What I should say to myself, or what I like do say to myself, I guess.
Sure. Let's say what you do say to yourself, and what do we want to shift it to?
Right now, I usually just like, spend a lot of time sitting there and not doing bad habits, but just like procrastinating, and then waiting on a jolt of like energy of just like, okay, I really need to get this done, and then just forcing myself to at least put something on the page.
Yeah. And then once you get something on the page, what happens then?
It's usually like a half an hour of hating it until kind of finally getting into more of a flow, I guess.
Okay. Yeah. So the way that almost all art works, outside of like very rare moments of like inspiration where something comes to you in like its completed form, it's always a process of like shitting out something terrible at first and then shaping it into something good.
Right.
Would you agree with that?
Definitely, yeah.
Okay. So when are you going to start acting like a damn artist and embracing that?
Yeah, I guess it's just hard to put that into practice, I guess, like on the day to day.
Actually, it's surprisingly simple to create bad stuff. And that's the thing, is you got to give yourself permission. I think the problem here is that you're being a bit too much of a perfectionist. It sounds like you're telling yourself to do something that you can't control, right? What you can't control is you can't control putting you cannot force yourself to produce something fantastic first try. In an artistic sense, it just doesn't work like that, right? Like a good, solid, completed, end result is the result of a lot of iteration, a lot of shifting and tweaking and finalizing. And you're telling yourself it should look like that from the beginning. And you can't do that. You can't choose to do that. And so you're putting yourself in this situation where you can't win. So of course you're going to feel a lot of negativity and frustration.
Right.
What do you think of that?
Okay. Yeah, I would definitely agree with that. Getting the habit of reminding myself that every day is hard, I guess. So maybe putting that in a meta script would be better.
Yeah, I think it would be. So I think what you got to do is maybe we got to look at realistically what an assignment actually is. Because the assignment, it's telling you what the end result's supposed to be, right? It's like, all right, you're supposed to produce this end thing and maybe use these concepts or procedures or whatever, right? But what they miss out is like, oh yeah, there's a bunch of steps before this where you produce a lot of really crappy stuff.
Yeah.
And so it's like, you got to factor that in. And so it's like, if I was like to give you the assignment of like, all right, create like the ugliest first draft of something that could maybe eventually like somehow fit, like work its way into this assignment. Okay.
Right.
How much resistance would you feel to doing that?
Not much.
Okay. So it's like, you got to add that part in, and like creating a meta script around this, I think would be really, essential. So how would we craft this main objective for yourself?
I guess like you said, in my most important tasks, just kind of put like one crappy 5-minute drawing in there.
Yeah, it might be many, all you need is an anchor to start working with. And like, I think the key to art is play. All right. That's, if you want to get the most flow states, the longest flow states, the most productive ones with the least resistance and that sort of thing, you got to be interested in what you're doing. You got to be having fun, right? And this is why like I had to like stop just talking about porn, because like it just became a grind. It's like I couldn't just do that. I had to like expand, and like, that's what you got to do. It's like, you got to figure out how to make it interesting to yourself, and then just kind of goof around. And like, that's where the best stuff's going to come from. And I think like in your scenario here, the key is to take the pressure off. Okay. Like, yes, the pressure is there, but rationally you got to step out of it if you want to be able to actually do a good job. Right.
Right.
And so taking that first piece of taking the expectation off, I think is going to be massive. But I'm trying to think of like, all right, so the main objective for you right now is to, on a practical level, we want to increase the amount of time you work on your art, right? What is that main objective on the identity level? How do you want to shift as a person?
I want to see myself as a more hardworking person, I guess.
Okay. What does hardworking mean?
Is able to push themselves even when it comes to they're bored, and just follow through with what they wanted to do.
Okay. And how do they push themselves?
Don't know.
Okay. So this is where I think this is important, because like, I think particularly with art, creative activity, you don't want to necessarily get better through force of will. You can, that's the hard way. I've done that, and there's value to be gained from that, but like, you can gain that same value by trying to be an artist who's simply more skilled at entering flow states. So instead of being like a harder worker, become a more skilled worker. Like, And one of the biggest things you can do that with is by asking yourself good questions of like, what's interesting here? What do I like about this assignment? What's what's the ugliest draft I can make? And then what's one thing I could do that could make this a little bit less ugly? Because what's powerful about questions, especially in creative stuff, is that they automatically engage a flow state. Like if you're doing art right, you're just pointing your attention at something and letting your brain work, right? The only thing you need to really force yourself to do is to show up. And once you do that, if you can get yourself into a dialogue with the activity, then you're going to be able to produce a lot more. This is something that I've had to learn how to do if I'm going to be, producing a video, 5 days a week. And it's like, it's just having an internal process. So if we're going to come back to this on the identity level, it's like, what do you think about the idea of being a man who can generate interest in his art no matter what? Because that to me sounds like it's a greater key to productivity than a guy who can just work hard.
Right. Just more interested in it altogether, you say?
Yeah.
As an identity?
As in he can create interest for himself.
Okay. Yeah, that sounds like a good ideal to have. What is that during self-talk, is that just asking myself questions of like, how is this interesting to me? Or like, how do I codify those questions to myself? Like how
yeah. So we got to get a process. Okay. So let's articulate a process that you're interested in exploring in yourself. Like, yeah, we can just focus on getting work done, but really what's interesting here is your evolution in character, right? And so ultimately you want to become more productive, right? And you need to have some grit and tenacity in there. Like you have to be willing to show up and face the discomfort. That's the hard part of the work. But beyond that, then it's really going to be about skill, because there's only so much willpower any given person has. And if they want to expand the efficiency of that willpower, it's all through skill. And so if step one is create a crappy draft, what do you do if you start getting stuck?
Usually it just, for me right now, I just kind of like once the motivation fades, I just kind of quit and wait till I can come back to it. But I guess the ideal there would be to ask myself, how can I make it more interesting?
Yeah, so there's a few different things that you could do. Is, a question barrage, just like what's an interesting question? That's something I ask myself all the time. It's like, it's not even an actual question yet. It's just a question to a question. And what you're doing there is you just kind of opening up your subconscious to like find a hook somewhere. Just finding a hook somewhere in the process. And it's like, oh, I think, this part of the assignment's interesting, or, oh, that, geometric design is interesting. I don't know what the hell you're doing, but like, you'll find something in there. Alternatively, you can do stuff like brainstorm. Just like, all right, let's come up with a list of 10 crappy ideas. And it's like, it's always gentle like that. And of course you're looking for something to be good, but you get to good stuff by sifting through a lot of like dirt. It's like you're panning for gold, right? If you're panning for gold, which is what you're doing as an artist, you're looking for those little nuggets of like, ooh, that's good. But like, if you want to maximize that efficiency, what do you have to maximize? The amount of dirt and sludge or whatever it is that stuff's called that you go through, right? And so the real question, the thing that you can always control is, how can I get more like mud to go through? And you can always produce more mud, right? Because it doesn't have to be good.
Yeah, I guess so.
Right? And as you start sorting through it, things start to happen. You start to get insights. You start to find those little nuggets, and then you piece them together.
Okay.
What do you think of that?
Yeah, that makes sense. Just
You sound partially sold on it.
yeah, I'm just trying to like organize it in my head, I guess, right now. Just working with my subconscious kind of to get myself more inspired than working against it. Like the, logical brain, like instead of punishing myself to work harder, it's like working with myself to get more inspired to want to work harder or work more at it.
It's more
And
like you're delivering the work in a way in which your subconscious can do. Because right now, your rational mind is asking your emotional mind or your subconscious mind to do something it can't. So if I say, like, what's 8,703,000 divided by 2.578, you can't do that, hopefully, unless you're a freak.
No.
And
No,
like,
no.
but like if I give you a calculator, all of a sudden it's trivial, right? It's like, what are the circumstances of the work that's being demanded? And so it's like your subconscious mind, it can produce stuff. Like if I ask you, name random foods, you can do that, right?
Yeah.
It's like if I say, what are different ways you could do this project? You could list options, right?
Yeah.
But if I say, give me the best way to do this project, your brain's like, I don't know.
Right.
Right? So it's about learning how to interface with your creative mechanism in a way that it produces useful outputs. And it doesn't mean all the outputs need to be useful. There just needs to be a percentage of the outputs that are useful.
Okay. So make it easier on myself to produce the stuff that I want to produce by letting myself just go freer with that then? Yeah.
Yeah. And like, this is what, like, what kind of art do you like? Like, what's your like real craft?
I specifically in drawing, I guess I really like perspective. When things like kind of jump out at the screen at you, and just a lot of details in a scene, like a lot of people running around everywhere.
Yeah. Okay. That's cool. And so can you think about times, previously or maybe even recently, like maybe when you're a kid, I don't know, but like where you just like were playing and you just got lost in doing your art?
Definitely in the past few years, I've like had projects where I just like work on it for like 6 hours because I'm like, I need to add in the next thing just to make it that much better, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah. And so you're having fun with it. You're like, you see something and it then compels you to like keep going. Right?
Yeah.
And that's what we're trying to do, but we're trying to make it a process, right? So we're trying to give your subconscious games that it can win. And once you start giving it games that it can win, it's going to be engaged. It's going to want to play. And if you find your subconscious not wanting to play, your emotionality shutting down, then something about the way you've set up the game is unproductive for it.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense.
Okay. How clear does that feel for a strategy for you?
Yeah, I think that's pretty clear. Just yeah, I can't say it as elegant as you do, but just make it easier on myself to accomplish the same thing.
Right, exactly. And so I think probably the big thing here is we want to set up a little bit more ambitious of a schedule for yourself rather than like 1 hour
Yeah.
in the morning and 1 hour in the evening. So what do you think is a baseline that like you would need to do on a day-to-day basis that like you feel pretty confident that you can hit using this methodology, but is not going to be insane?
I would say at least 4 hours a day, and a lot more of just starting like warm up, I guess what you're saying, of just letting the creativity flow there. Yeah, but 4 hours definitely I could do.
Okay. So then I would say that's the place to start and maybe adjust from there. But like, like for me, I've got, in terms of like really focused work, I aim to get 4 minimum each day or 5, ideally. So I try to hit 5. I can, almost always hit 4. And so it's like getting much beyond that starts getting pretty difficult. One of the things you want to be careful of is holding this expectation that you should be doing like 8 hours of like creative work, because it's like, oh, it should be a 9 to 5. It's like, it's rare that you find a creative that can do that. There are always like outliers and stuff like that, but like around 4 hours, that's the max for a lot of people. For me, I can do 4 to 5 because a lot of times I'll have a coaching call or something like this or whatever, and those are less taxing to me. If I was doing pure content, 4 would probably be my high end. So just make sure that you're like not expecting too much for yourself with the creative work. So honestly, even if you just bumped it up to 3 hours right now, like if you set that as a baseline, like 3 as a baseline and then 4 as an ideal, I would maybe even start there. What do you think of that?
Yeah. Yeah, I could do that as well. And it's probably more realistic in my starting position. Yeah, it's just I wonder like how people in like full-time positions in creative positions do that then for like 8 hours a day. Like I guess that's the external motivation of being in a workplace with other people, so that's added motivation. So
who are you thinking of when you say that?
Well, I want to get into the games industry, so like games artists and concept artists and like 3D animators.
Okay, so there's a difference between creative art and procedural work. So there's a difference between, for example, designing a character model and then just like having that model do things that that it's supposed to do.
Right.
So procedural stuff you can do for hours. Okay? Like menial tasks where it's like, all right, I know what it's supposed to happen. I just got to like go through the labor of making it occur. That you can do all day. Once you've conditioned yourself. But it's the real critical thinking aspect where you're like problem solving in your head as you go. That's the thing that people tend to do, like they can only do for a limited period of time.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. So the hard focus, I guess. Tasks.
Right.
Okay.
And that's probably an important thing to have an awareness around in your work. Okay. Like, you want to be able to quantify how, like, doesn't need to be like an exact measurement, but like you want to have an idea of how taxing is this going to be on your brain. So like if they're asking you to do something and it's like relatively, blank paper, it's like zero guidance given, you have to just create something, that's heavy cognitively. Okay. But if they say, all right, here's this 3D model of a frog, now you just need to like make him ride this unicycle. That's an entirely different thing. That I wouldn't even say that's a creative thing so much as it is just a, figuring out how to work the software and then just programming it.
Yeah. Yeah. That makes sense. Definitely the more menial work I could separate into either the warm-up or like as the extra stuff not counted towards the minimum hard creative work that I need to do.
Yeah. Yeah, and you might need to adjust that plan day to day depending upon what your assignments bring you. So that's the big thing. Is just make sure you're tracking how this is for you. Keep a good procedure so that you're constantly feeding your subconscious work that it can do. And I think that should help a lot with your productivity. What do you think?
Yeah, sounds good. Okay. That helps a lot, definitely.
Awesome.
I did have the other main question or goal is along with making that more productive life that I would want to have someone step into now that I'm going back into dating after doing the reboot. Because of COVID and everything, there's not too many opportunities to like just organically meet new people and like see them for a while. With Tinder, it seems like more of a high speed, like casual, non-committal kind of stuff, which is I'm looking for a more long-term relationship now, hopefully. And that doesn't seem to, I don't know how well that would work out or not. I haven't tried it yet, but like I feel like it wouldn't work
Okay.
today's like dating market with that app.
Okay. So you feel like it's either, go meet people meet people in person, which you can't really do, or use Tinder. Are those the only options?
There's probably other things that I'm not thinking of, but like, just meeting people like through clubs and sports and stuff like that. That's like closed off to me right now. So what I would normally do, just like making new friends that way.
Yeah. I mean, like, I think technological meetups and stuff like that, that's probably your best bet. But like, you don't need to use Tinder. It's not the only dating app. I'm sure there are dating apps that are more focused on like long-term dating sort of thing. And so I just maybe do a little research on that. I don't know. I don't know anything about dating. I know like eHarmony and stuff like that. That's for like people who are really looking for a match and whatnot. I don't know anything about it, but like you could do some research and find some alternatives like that. Hell, you could even use Tinder and just use it overtly and be like, have it in your profile. I don't even know. Do you have like profiles in Tinder? Just be like, I'm looking for long-term relationships and not sleep around with all you sluts. No, just kidding. But like, you could do something and just make it like real up front and, still try it out. Like, I don't think that like you don't need to just play the game as other people are playing it right now. And I think that's the big thing to own is like, you have your intentions and desires and just put them out there. Just find some way to do it and, give yourself a chance.
Yeah. Yeah, I guess I just seem like it's harder to keep someone interested for that long. Well, just like taking it slow and waiting would be that like viable or whatever.
Have you tried it?
No, I haven't. So I'm waiting for 90 days. After that,
Okay.
I'll try it. But I guess I got to try it out first.
I think it depends entirely on the person. That's really the heart of it is like, yeah, some people today, they just want to, have a casual hookup. A lot of people today, that's what they're doing. But I also think a lot of people who are having casual hookups don't actually want that. They're just doing it because everybody else is doing it. And everyone's got it in their head that this is, it's a third date and we haven't had sex yet. Oh my God, like they're going to leave me unless I do this. And then they both like, push it forward. Usually probably, I think that happens to both guys and girls. So it's just be upfront with what you want. And there's definitely women out there who don't want to just sleep around. They want relationships. A lot of women want relationships. A lot of men want relationships. I think just everybody is so caught up in what's expected. Because I've heard this from a lot of guys before. It's like, how can I do hard mode when some girl might come along and she wants to hook up and I have to have sex with her? I'm like, that's not how it works, dude. It's like you get to decide what you want to do. And like, I think people overestimate too, like how like it's more like a scarcity mentality. It's like, well, if I don't hook up with the person who wants to hook up with me, well, then I'll never find anyone again who ever wants to hook up with me. And it's like, that's insane. Don't think like that. It's like you can take your time and play the game the way you want to play it. And the more you stick to who you want to be, the more likely it is that you're going to find someone that you actually vibe with.
Okay. Yeah. It'll. I guess it'll just be maybe harder. You might probably disagree with that. Of just finding someone who actually has those ideals, I guess. But that's like the better way anyway.
I don't know if it's gonna be harder. In some ways, it's like the more like if this is considered a niche view, like if you want to build a business, guess what they say? You got to find a niche. You have to find a small segment of the population who you vibe with really well. And so if everybody's out there being like, hey, trying to bang on the first date, and you're not very explicitly being like, hey, I'm looking for a relationship, well then, yeah, maybe you'll turn away thousands of people, but you don't need to date thousands of people. You want one person. And what you're doing is you're sending out a homing beacon that resonates strongly with all the people who could potentially be that one person. And so, yeah, I do disagree. I think that would actually help you stand out and significantly increase your chances of finding such a person. And maybe you could increase that even further by going to the platforms that specifically are looking for that sort of thing.
Right. Yeah, that makes sense. Fair enough. I was, not trying to, I guess, before just worrying too much about the people I might not authentically connect with. So that makes sense.
Yeah. I mean, so what's interesting about that is like you want to push away those people as much as you want to attract the other people. And that's one of the things like I had to learn about like branding and stuff is like it's just as valuable to turn people away as it is to attract people to you. Because like not everybody's supposed to be with you. Not everybody's supposed to, vibe with you. And so it's like you want to be somewhat repellent to the people who are not supposed to be with you because then that clears the space. But then the extent to which you repel the wrong people is the extent to which you attract the right ones. And it's like utilizing this sort of polarization is, I think, really important for finding your group of people in this world.
Okay. Cool. Yeah. I had one last question.
Sure. So,
I guess just on that topic of like finding your people, I guess, how much do you like, I guess, qualify your friends, I guess, and the people around you on how much they have the same ideals as you as well? Because nobody has to be the same exact person as you, and you don't have to judge everybody super hard either. But it isn't you are the average of the 5 people around you or whatever.
Yeah, people say that. I don't think that's true. But I think the biggest thing, there's got to be like a fundamental like moral alignment. It's like I'm not going to be spending time with people who regularly behave in ways I deeply disagree with. All right, so that's got to be there. But they don't like it doesn't need to be like a perfect alignment of values. Like I've got a group of friends from high school that, I'm still very, very close with, and I love each of them, very much. But they don't agree with me on everything. We have differing views on politics. Some of them probably could care less about my work and like what I stand for with, quitting porn and all that kind of stuff. Some of them, are more interested in it. And like, it doesn't matter because like when we're all together, that's the vibe that really clicks. Like we have a fantastic time with each other and we don't have unwanted drama and it's just generally wonderful, right? Now the criteria for a friend to hang out with is different from an employee or a business partner. It's like you got to figure out what kind of experiences are you interested in having with this person and figuring out, can you be compatible with that person for the experience set that I'm looking for with them? Right? Like, so like, for example, someone that I work with, I don't need to necessarily be able to have as much fun with them as I would with one of my high school friends. But like there are some of my high school friends that I wouldn't work with, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So it's like you gotta figure out what values are most important for the slot that you're looking to fill. Does that make sense?
Yeah, for sure, definitely. Yeah, that makes sense. Because and you can also have different, I guess, like slots for different groups of friends anyway. Like not the same groups don't have to meet the same standards.
Oh yeah, 100%. I mean, like that's why people have like. Maybe you have your drinking buddies, and then maybe you have like your self-development buddies. Maybe you got your sports buddies. Like, it's kind of difficult to have any sort of diverse group of friends right now because this wonderful world we live in. But things will open back up eventually, and you'll be able to do that. And I think it'll feel good. And it's good to have different kinds of people you can do different kinds of things with.
Cool. Yeah. Well, that answers all what I was wondering about today.
Okay. Well, wonderful, man. I think we got a good plan for you. I think, I'm excited to see what happens with your productivity stuff. So make sure you keep checking back in with me in the Vanguard. And if you run into any blocks or anything, let's figure them out and keep you moving forward. Okay.
All right. Sounds good. Thanks a lot.
Yeah. Thanks for coming on, man. I'll see you.